Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Media Talk. I'm your host, Mark, and today I will be interviewing a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Why, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Adrian Goff, and I am the designer of GameFrag Gaming Magazine. I'm sure that you want to know a lot about the magazine, so let us begin.
Well, all right, Sean. So, how does GameFrag magazine use or challenges conventions, and how does it represent current social issues?
Using genre theory by Steve Neal, I plan to follow the conventions yet subvert a few of them. According to Steve Neal, he states that audience enjoys meeting their expectations and discovering the genre of magazine. He also states that the audiences enjoy experiencing something new to break stagnation.
So, what genre is your magazine, and what are the conventions that apply to entertainment magazines?
Gaming magazines include majority of the codes and conventions of most magazines, e.g. mastheads, cover lines, and more. Evidence of competition, seeing which brand is better, e.g. PlayStation versus Xbox. Central imaging, which is basically a direct mode of address. Puffs to advertise exclusive features. A space on top, usually containing a selling point, e.g. UK's #1 magazine. Hardware reviews, game reviews, comparisons, exclusive insights, usually representing new trends, such as new gaming consoles.
So, for the design and layout, how did you follow the conventions or subvert the conventions?
Gaming magazines typically have a semi-organized layout, with a central image in the middle, which is a direct mode of address. I chose to follow this layout since it displays genre and appeals to the audience needs, which links to uses and gratifications. As for secondary topics and features, I scattered it around the main image, as it is the second thing people will see. A convention that magazines use is to make images pop out of the image box, to make them seem 3D and important. This is a way to hook the audience. Another convention that I utilized is the number of cover lines and topics, which tells the audience that what they are getting for the price of the magazine is good. As for the topics, range from VR to whoever is going to win Game of the Year. For the contents page, I followed typical gaming magazine conventions that work for the magazine. The layout of the page is clean and organized, which helps readers navigate. It also follows the convention of being semi-organized, as there are a few puffs scattered around the page. I use gaming magazine conventions to separate more minor stories from much more important and major stories, which makes it easy for readers to find out what they're looking for. I made sure to include a handful of images in order to make the page pop out much more. It was also to increase the interest in main topic due to me adding an additional image there. As for the double page spread, I designed and formatted the layout around the main image of my model so that the main image takes up the majority of the page. This is intentional, as the double page spread is dedicated to the story. I made sure to include some of the same colors used in the front cover of the story in order to help readers realize this is the same story. As well as whipped up a table which displayed different headsets and their features. The structured formatting of the text follows conventions as it is organized with a handful of images throughout the text, making it semi-organized. As well as that, I continued following conventions by making a header of the story highlighted with a blue background to indicate this is the title. I also include a drop capital, which is another common convention in magazines.
Oh, so what are the photographic codes and conventions?
Well, for the cover, I had to make sure that the singular image on the front cover looked professional and made sure that it fitted the aesthetic of the front cover. For my main cover image, I used conventions to take the photo similar to the ones used in other gaming magazines such as PC Gamer. This is very common in gaming magazines and allows the audience to easily identify that the magazine is a gaming magazine. In order for it to also fit with the color palette of the magazine, which is mostly a blue and green gradient, I made sure to adjust the lights so that they shone the correct color. For content, I made sure to have a similar photo to one on the front cover. However, I made sure to adjust the lights so it fit with the theme of the contents pages. Having an image tied to the main story on the comments page is a very common convention in gaming magazines, but usually they represent virtual characters, not actual models. So in essence, I am subverting the convention, which can be interesting to my audience. I made sure to take the photo in a way that made my model seem like a game character to ensure audience familiarity. For the double page spread, I made sure my model posed like a virtual character to ensure that the audience was familiar with it, reinforcing the conventions. Her pose is dominant, which represents her as a powerful main character, like other virtual characters in video games.
Okay, so what conventions did you follow for the colour palette?
I followed the conventions and made sure to use deep and vibrant colors that are commonly used in gaming magazines. I mainly used green and blue. However, for blue, I had a sky blue shade for the contents page and double page spread. I used much darker colors on the front cover to match with the theme to create a house style for my magazine.
Okay, so what verbal codes and conventions did you follow or subvert?
For the cover, on the main cover line, I wrote the text with a more confident theme, stating that the future is. The way I wrote the question attracts the audience due to the confident nature of the cover line, as they want to see what is in the story. For the name of my magazine, I followed conventions of gaming magazines and made sure to include a word that is commonly used in gaming, as well as some slang to connect with my audience. Game, as in gaming and games, and frag as slang, meaning top of the leaderboard. The slang tells my audience that this is the best magazine, as frag in gaming language is a positive word. On the skyline, I made sure to put down UK's #1 gaming magazine to attract even more readers, as they are assured that this is the best choice. For cover lines, I made sure to include words such as exclusive, insight, and review, as they all follow the same codes and conventions as gaming magazines due to these stories being featured everywhere. For the contents page, I made sure to keep the language clear in order to help audience navigate around the page, as well as a few pull quotes for the individual stories in order to make them seem more interesting. As for the double page spread, I made sure to put on the main cover line at the top of the page to indicate readers that this is the main story.
So, what about typography? What codes and conventions did you follow or subvert?
For the typography in my magazine, I made sure to not use serif fonts because I was following the conventions of gaming magazines. Gaming magazines use sans serif fonts as they look more modern than serif fonts. The reason for this is because my modern audience will find it familiar. I also chose this because it would be easier to read when the text is all clumped together. To ensure that the audiences know where the header is, I also make sure to size up the text, as well as put a background behind it to signal the audience.
And what about gender and ethnicity? Did you follow codes and conventions?
For my magazine, I actually represented women completely compared to men for the main stories, which subverts the conventions of typical gaming magazines, as the main audience is a male demographic. However, in addition to that, the ethnicity represented is also uncommon, hence why I've subverted it as well. This is because I want to increase the representation of women and more Asian ethnicities, as it is a growing market in Central Asia. As well as that, more and more women are joining the gaming industry.
Well, thank you for that, Sean. We really enjoyed your interview. Dear patrons, please make sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Media Talk, as we will be discussing the Fast and Furious franchise. See you next time.